So, Lone Rider here, and I want to talk about my version of compact gearing. Traditionally, on a road bike, you have three types of front gear setups. You have a standard double, you have a triple, or you have compact gearing. There's a fourth type, but you don't see it that much anymore, and that's a traditional double. So going over these four, a traditional double, you have a 52-tooth outer gear and a 42-tooth inner gear. A modern double, or a conventional double, you have 53-tooth outer gear and a 39-tooth inner gear. A triple, you have 52, 42, and then a little inner gear that's usually 32. And then a modern compact double, you typically have a 50-tooth outer gear and a 34-tooth inner gear. Now, this is my custom bike that I made with the help of my friend Steve at the local bike shop. I brazed the main frame and did a lot of the lug work. Came up with this design for my version of fastback stays, where instead of being mounted to the center, they're mounted to the outside, preserving wider tire clearance. This bike's got 32s, so pretty wide tires. And my friend made the fork and did all the little heebie-jeebies, but I made the main frame. There's some features on this bike that I really like. There's some things I would do different if I had it to do again. But one of the things that I'm very happy with is the way the gearing came out. And the reason is I used my own version of compact gearing. I have a 50-tooth outer sprocket, but the inner gear is a 36, not a 34. And the reason for that is I was never really all that satisfied with a traditional modern compact in terms of the inner gear. I was always very happy with the idea of a 50-tooth instead of a 53 or even a 52, because you could stay in the bigger gear longer. If you were going over, just slightly rolling terrain or whatever, there was no need to shift down. The bigger gear was a little easier, so it was a little more of a balance. But whenever I shifted down to the 34, I always felt that I was spinning out, that I did, never in the right gear. Now that's more so with more gears in the back. This particular bike is interesting. This bike has a 9-speed setup, but only 8 gears. And there's a reason for that. There's nothing to do with my preference for 8-speed. I mean, I prefer 8 and 9-speed generally. 10-speed's okay sometimes. But in this particular case, it has to do with a mistake I made when I made the frame. I didn't provide enough of a cutout for the outermost gear. So when the wheel was in the bike, all the gears functioned properly. But if I had to take the wheel off the bike, like to change a flat, the outermost gear would scrape on the frame. And traditionally, on a lugged steel road frame, you relieve that by cutting out part of the tube and then brazing over. I didn't make enough of a cutout. So what I did is I removed the outermost gear, I put a spacer on there, and I just locked out with the limit screws so that it doesn't go down that far. So it's an 8-speed, but with 9-speed shift levers and derailleurs and chain and all that jazz. So that's it's not the rear gearing. My main problem with a 34-tooth front gear on modern compacts is that if I have, let's say, 10-speed, I'm always skipping around. I always feel like I'm in the wrong gear because there's too many divisions in the back. That wasn't so much my problem with this, but it was just that the bike felt like 34 was too small, right? For all-around riding. I mean, if I was going to be riding in extremely hilly terrain all day, then yeah, 34 might not have been bad, but it felt like it was just too under geared. So I jumped it up to a 36, and between the 50 and the 36, this thing is spot on as far as I'm concerned. And the good news is, you know, bikes are relatively easy to work on once you get the hang of it. So, um, you know, not everybody can do everything excellently like a proper mechanic, but something as simple as removing the chainring bolts and swapping gears, that's fairly good enough to do. And I've been doing this for a long time, so I'm a fairly adept mechanically with many of these things. So that's my version of modern compact gearing. A slightly higher inner gear, and the whole thing just works a little better, in my opinion. It's worth noting, by the way, that compact gearing isn't necessarily as new an invention as people think. Generally speaking, when people think of compact gearing for the road, there were attempts at compact gearing on early mountain bikes as well, and mountain bike gearing by its definition is compact in comparison to road gears. But way back in like the mid-90s, Trek came out with a welded steel road bike. I think it was the 470, I'm not sure exactly. And that had a 48 and then like a 36. So, you know, this sort of thing has been tried before. The modern compact gearing settled on 50 and 34. And in that way, I guess you could say I was just kind of bringing it back. And I attempted to make my own. I mean, I remember way back, I took an old Trek frame I had and I put a 48 or 49 on the outside. And for an inner gear, I used like a 40. This was back in like 2001 or something, before compact gearing really took off. So, you know, I've always tinkered with the gearing on my bikes, but this particular setup, the 50, the stock 50, and then the 36 on the inside, opposed to a 34, this really makes a difference for this bike. So, that's my version of compact gearing, and Lone Rider out.